And in case if the company does not want to make a payment to the vendor within this company code, anywhere within this company code, then they can come to this screen, set up the payment block option here. So block for payment will indicate that effective immediately until this block code exists in this company code. Within this company code, this vendor payment cannot be processed. Right? For now, just leave it blank, which will indicate free for payment. The next screen is payment correspondence. Just leave it blank. It will be maintained by the FI end users. The last screen that we are going to talk about is the purchasing data screen, which is used for maintaining all the purchase related information for purchasing a material or service from this vendor under this purchasing organization. So the first field is order currency, which specifies the currency in which the payment transactions are to be carried out. Terms of payment, it is the same options as the payment terms field in the company code data. The reason it was not automatically updated is because even though within the company code a vendor will normally have the same payment terms, there is a possibility that within a specific purchasing organizations, the payment may have been negotiated differently. So to enable maintaining a different payment terms for a specific purchasing organization, both the fields are not connected. Inco Terms is used to specify the standard terms of foreign trade. So when you are importing from the vendor and the vendor is located outside the country, there are some additional costs and risk involved, which the vendor may not be ready to uh, you know, bear in full. So for those types of activities, Incoterms identify the sharing of cost and risk between the company code and the vendor. So these terms are internationally common. They are created and maintained by an international organization called ICC, which is the International Chambers of Commerce. So for example, if we take CFR cost and freight, that means all the costs and freight charges will be borne by the vendor. Anything additional like insurance or border taxes will have to be borne by the company. COD indicates cash on delivery. That means all the costs, freight, insurance, everything involved during transportation of the material will be borne by the vendor, but the vendor will expect the payment to be done immediately on delivery. It need not be by cash, but when we say COD, it means the payment has to be processed immediately. Border delivered, the vendor will deliver the material till a border point of the country. He is not ready to deliver within the country. So the company has to pick up the goods from that border point specified. Another interesting one is your EXW, which is from plant. That means the vendor is not going to deliver outside of his plant. If the company wants to get material from that vendor, then the company has to take the delivery from the vendor plant itself. But one of the commonly used is free on board. That means the vendor will supply the material to the indicated location of the company at the negotiated price. There will be no additional cost involved. That means all insurances, border taxes, customs, anything involved will be borne by the vendor. So in case the vendor you're creating is an import related vendor, then you need to specify the import terms. If not, you can leave it blank. Minimum order value will specify the minimum value the vendor will accept in any order for any material or service provided by that vendor under this purchasing organization to any plant. So based on the negotiation again, the relevant value can be entered. Schema Group will identify the pricing procedure. This we will cover again later during the pricing procedure topic. Salesperson identifies the person within the company code who is responsible for the customer to which you are going to supply from this vendor. So the material purchased from this vendor under this purchasing organization, if it is going to be supplied to a specific customer of yours, then that customer will be handled by a salesperson. So that salesperson detail is what you're going to maintain here. And based on the control data maintained here, different aspects of purchase, delivery, and payment will be carried out. For example, if you check GR-based invoice verification, that means the invoice sent by the vendor should be separate for each delivery. If it is not checked, then the vendor can send an invoice for multiple deliveries together. Similarly, service-based invoice verification indicates when the service is completed, even if it is a partial service, then that service completion certificate, based on the service completion certificate, the vendor has to send an invoice separately, right? If it is not checked, then they can club 2-3 services together and send the invoice together. Acknowledgement required will indicate that any communication with the vendor under this purchasing organization, the vendor has to acknowledge that communication. Automatic purchase order indicates that if any of the material supplied by this vendor under this purchasing organization, if the purchase order has to be created automatically, one of the settings is this automatic purchase order check. So this topic will be covering later during purchasing. At that time, you'll understand the importance of this check. If the vendor is a import vendor and in the Inco terms border delivered is specified, then we use these two fields to indicate how the delivery is made to the border and at which border point the vendor is going to deliver the material. And other values like other checks are required to maintain the relevant data. So once you maintain the data, click on Save to create your vendor master record. And this is the vendor number generated automatically based on the number range maintained. If you want to create another vendor with similar data, again in the initial screen, in the reference fields, enter the vendor number, company code, and purchasing organization. If you enter only vendor number, the general data maintained for this vendor will be automatically copied. If you enter vendor number and company code, then only general data and company code data will be copied. If you enter all the three, then all the three types of data maintained for this vendor will be copied to the new vendor that you're going to create. So here, except for the name region for the vendor, all the other data will be automatically copied. So if you want to keep the same thing, you can keep it, or you want to change it, you can change it. For your practice, you can do whatever you want. I'm just going to modify some of these values and save it. Done. So like this again, like the material that we created, create at least 3 to 4 vendors so that we have some good number of vendors for practice. I'm just going to create 4 vendors here. That's similar data. Once you're done, if you want to change the vendor, you go to XK02. Entering only the vendor number will allow you to select only the general data. In case you don't enter the company code data or purchasing organization, but you select any of the company code data screens or the purchasing data screens, then the system will ask you to enter the company code and purchasing organization. So without entering that, the company code and purchasing data cannot be selected. So, and another interesting thing is, whatever screens you have selected are the screens that will be displayed. The system will not give you an option to select any other view, unlike the material master where you can select any other view when you are making the changes. Alright. So like this, once you have made the necessary changes, as you can see, we selected 4 screens and only the 4 screens were allowed to be changed. Okay. So if you want to display, again XK03, again the same criteria. You enter vendor number only general data can be displayed. You enter vendor number, company code, general data, and company code data will be displayed. Enter all the 3, then all the 3 types of data will be displayed. Right? To check what are the changes made, we go to XP04, and no, there is no future dated scheduling of vendor creation. There is no schedule. There is no option to schedule creation of a vendor at a future date, unlike the material master. So enter the relevant data, press enter, and it will show you what are the details that have been changed. Double click on the entry to see what is the change maintained, and again double click on it to see on what date, at what time, which user made changes to which field, from what value to what value, right? Similarly, industry will also show you. Terms of payment is repeated twice because terms of payment exists in two different screens. So the first terms of payment will be in the company code. This is the table name and field name. Field name will be the same, but the table name will be different for the purchasing organization, right? So that's the reason why both fields are not linked together, but they are getting the same type of options. Now the next transaction is an interesting one, which is XK05. Now this transaction is used for block unblock vendor, that is for temporary suspension of the vendor. In case the company has an issue with the vendor in the sense that the vendor is not following the delivery terms properly, or the material supplied by that vendor is not meeting the quality standards of the company, or if the vendor is sending invoices twice for the same quantity delivered,